Hi, my name is Drew Scott and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, DASEK, and in this video I'm going to be talking about this right here behind me, which is an LED slat wall. Now this is in my music / office, and I decided to go with this because I had seen a video on YouTube of someone else that had did the wall, and I was like, I think I like that. Didn't really know what it was going to take to bring it all together, and didn't know how it was going to turn out. Some of the things was a learning curve, such as the LED portion of it, and figuring out how I was going to actually integrate it, how many LEDs, things like that, what material I was going to use for the actual slats, and I'll kind of go through all that in this video. It makes for a great backdrop for videos, makes for a great accent wall for the room itself. You'll see some video footage of that here later on in this video. And I'll let you know all the products that I used. Most everything I got off of Amazon. I'll leave a link down in the description as well as a link to my website. And hopefully this will help you in maybe accomplishing the same task. Maybe you got some other ideas, but this will apply to that. And maybe you just want to have the same outcome that I got, which is the wall behind me. So in this video we'll discuss that and go through all of the process of how I went through in building this wall. So this is how I went from this to this. As you can see, it started off very bland. They had all tan colors throughout the house. So this is what we had when we moved in, which worked fine, you know, to get started. So then I went to work and started painting the room. Now these colors, I have to give credit to my wife. She picked them out. Other than the blue, the gray ended up really tying everything together. It is awesome. I can leave these paint codes down in the description as well if you would like them. So I started off with pine fir strips. These are 1 inch wide and 8 foot long. And I had gotten some of this channel from Amazon. These are LED channels, extrusions. They have a little cover that goes over the top of them, which is this little white strip here, and it just snaps into the face of it. Now without this, you would see all the LEDs individually. They came with some clear, the one that I ordered, some clear black kind of frosted, not really frosted, but it was black clear, and I didn't realize that at the time that I ordered it. So I ended up having to order a roll of just the frosted white so that I could get the effect that I was looking for. It's also really easy to pull out whenever you get ready to you take it out just as easy as you put it in, which is just pulling from one edge and it pulls right out. So to start with, I needed to figure out what kind of layout I wanted, how many of these LED strips I wanted in the wall. So what I did is I've been messing with some 3D modeling inside of Blender, if you've heard of that, and I made my own rendering of kind of what I was looking for in the room, and this is the layout that I came up with. Once I figured out the layout, I needed to figure out what the spacing I wanted was between each board, which I went with 3/4 of an inch, which happens to be the thickness of each one of these boards. So I took and I made my own tool so that I could put my level on it and just go all the way down the wall, making sure everything was straight up and down. And at the same time, I took and I nailed a piece of the fir strip to the side of one of the boards so that I could get the spacing that I wanted without actually having to go through and measure out each time. Now for the backing, or what I attached the boards to, I actually spaced it away from the wall using the 1 inch fir strips and put about 4 rows, evenly distributed them down the wall, so that I could have something to mount it to other than trying to go into sheetrock and worrying about, you know, whether or not I was going to hit a stud. So it made it a lot easier. So I took a plunge router, and with the 3/4 inch bit, I routered out the middle of each of these fur strips for the channel, which that is the size of the channel. It's just big enough for it to slide inside of it. I had a staggered look, so I had to figure out which ones I was going to have longer, shorter, and that's where that layout that I had came in and helped out a lot with. So this next section, I'm just going to show you what was required and what you have to do to solder these things together, and kind of point out some things you need to know about these LEDs. So if we look here, each one of these copper tabs are areas where you can cut the LEDs in half. You can see they've even got you a little line there that helps you to make sure you cut it in the middle, give you room on each side so that you can solder them, do what you need to. The very bottom is your power, 12 volts. I went with the 12 volt version. The next one up is your data in. The next one up from that is your backup data in, and then the top is the ground. Now, I didn't use the backup data. I didn't really feel like I needed it. It's there for if your regular data is lost, you've got something to back that up. Another important thing is you'll notice that there is an arrow right up under each one of these LEDs. So the arrow is used to tell you which direction the power is supposed to flow. So there's diodes built into these things, and they work as check valves. And if for some reason you try to send power from the opposite direction that your arrow is going, then it will not work. It basically blocks the power. So power has to come in from this side and run this way. So you can see that we've got 12 volts that comes in, and then it goes out, each one of these LEDs. That's why you see on the forward side of the LED it says data in, data out. DO is data out, DI is data in. So I chose to go with the 300 count, which is has a lot more LEDs per spacing. The 150 count, it's every other LED pretty much. And I know this video is a little blurry, but this is kind of how it turned out with my GoPro whenever I was doing the soldering. So when you cut these, you want to cut along the line that's through the middle of the copper tabs, like so. Gives you equal distance on either side, and I usually take something and lay on top of the LEDs so to keep it flat. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tin the copper tabs as well as the wire before joining them together. Now I've got a little cheapo soldering iron, and all you want to do is heat up that copper tab, dab in some solder, and it should flow right onto that tab. Now you don't want to go too much and let it overflow into the other tabs, and then you start making connections you don't want. But it's just simple. Stick your soldering iron on that tab for just a second, it doesn't take long, and then dab in some solder. And now that you have that done, now you can go to the wire. So had I used the backup data, I would have used a 4-pin wire. It would have been just as easy to use it, but it is a little more expensive. So I chose to go with the 3-pin wire since I wasn't using the backup data. I know the guy that I watched on YouTube had some issues with the backup data wiring, and I don't know that it was with the wiring as far as it being backup data, but I know he had some wiring issues, it seemed like. He also had to do some power injections, which I actually did not have to do. What happens is after you start running a length of wire so long through the LEDs, it'll start to lose its power to actually illuminate the LED. But I did not have that issue with my wall. I only needed one power source. Never had to inject power anywhere. So you're going to want to strip your wire, and you don't need to strip it very far from the end. The strippers that I'm using, it was hard not to strip a certain amount off the wire just because it wouldn't grab it very well. And then I end up cutting off some of it, twist it up, make it a real tight twist. And then I end up cutting some of it off with some flush snips. You don't want too much wire overhanging your solder points for it to accidentally touch into another connection. So you want to have them just long enough to where it'll be easy to connect them. So now you need to tin the wire itself, and this is kind of tricky. At least it takes a little bit of practice sometimes, I think, but once you've done it a few times, it'll get easier. So you're not gonna try to hold the solder there. You're basically just gonna kind of swipe down the wire. So you want to touch both the soldering iron and the solder to the wire at the same time, and letting the solder kind of hit the iron, and just run it down the wire. I know my finger's in the way here, but you just want to let it flow out onto the wire and drag it down it. There's a better view of it there. And you just need a little bit on it so that there's some solder there for when you heat it up, the solder will transfer to the solder that you put on the LED strip, and it will make a good connection. I think this is partially why I didn't have a whole lot of issues with my LEDs not working or getting power all the way to the end. Again, all the other videos I watched, the guy had issues once he got out so far of him having flickering in his lights, not quite getting the colors to illuminate all the way to the end. I did not have any of those issues, but on another application that I use these wires or these strips for, I did have problems with the one side not working, and I checked my connections. I did the exact same process you're seeing here. You just hold the soldering iron to that pin until you get it to transfer over. You got to hold it there for just a second, let that solder cool down, and then it'll hold it in place. But the problem I think I ran into is I was using some butt connectors for the areas that I wanted to be able to disconnect, and I will actually show those here later on in this video. And it made it easier. I actually used the butt connections between each of my LEDs to where if I ever had to pull one out, I could do that and I could replace it, do what I needed to, but instead of having to redo all of the wiring. But after you get it all soldered together, you're going to want to take and connect or put some shrink wrap around the end of it so that you don't have anything that interferes with it, such as the metal channel that it's going to be going against. You definitely don't want that to happen. But back to the butt connectors, I think whenever I was crimping them down, they actually had pinched the wire to the point where it wasn't letting the power flow through it. Whatever the problem was, it was in my butt connectors. Once I fixed that issue, everything worked perfectly fine. So if you have some that's not working, or you're having issues with not quite doing what it's supposed to, check your connections. That's the best advice I can give to you. It doesn't take much. All it takes is one connection to be broken, and it puts a kink in your whole process. So before you go attaching your wire, you're going to have to know how far the distance is between each one of your slats that are going to have the LEDs in it. And of course you're going to want to pre-cut your LED strips to fit inside the channel. So once you've got your channel routed out of the first strip or the piece of wood that you're using, you're going to want to go in and kind of temporarily lay in your LED strip. So after I figured out how I needed to cut the LED for it to fit inside the channel, I did not attach it permanently just yet. I took it back out, I laid in my channel, and then I drilled holes through the wood from the back of the channels out the back so that I could feed the wire through the back side of the piece of wood. Now this is how I ran my wiring, and depending on the effect that you're wanting, you're gonna have to, kind of orient your LEDs the way that you envision in your own mind. In mine, I wanted the rainfall kind of look, or when the effects were playing, everything could either run down or run up. Now in the app for the controller, you can actually go in and change the direction at which the LEDs flow. So keep that in mind when you are, kind of planning this out. So after you've gotten your spacing, you want to figure out the amount of wire that you're going to need between each one, and then you can start actually attaching everything. I use butt connectors between each LED so that it made it easier if I had to actually pull out an LED for some reason, it stopped working or whatever later on in life. I could actually pull that down and replace it without having to go through and cut wires and all that good stuff. So as you can see, I had two channels that ran from the controller. One ran to the left, one ran to the right from my power source. And everything comes in from the top and then runs to the bottom as far as the wires go, and it just continues that on out to the very last LED that's on the most outboard sides. So this is how I decided to set up my power supply and my controller. So I just basically left a piece right in the middle of my wall where I had an outlet, and I used some of the cover from the channels to kind of hold everything in place. I went to Lowe's, got these little cabinet hold close and hold springs, which work really great keeping everything closed up. And then there's those butt connectors and the two channels going to the left, going to the right. And when it's all closed up, I kind of cut out a little spot so in case I wanted to use the controller manually, I could. That tells me if my power supply is on or not. And it looks pretty clean, I think. So this here is the app that you can use to control your LEDs. I'm just going to go through here in this section and just kind of go through each one of the effects. I think it goes up to like 40 something effects. The last about 10 or so are all kind of musical, where they kind of beat to the music or flash to the music. But for what it is and how much this controller costs, I mean, the effects that you get off of this app is pretty impressive in my opinion. I mean, there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. You can adjust different variables such as the speed, the brightness, the length of the effect. the direction of the effect, and you can do it for each channel. So you can have one side of the wall doing one thing, you can have the other side of the wall doing another, and it just really is a pretty good bang for your buck in my opinion. So I'll let you continue to watch, and hopefully this helps you make your decision on whether or not this is something you want to use. Now later on, I do have plans on using like a Raspberry Pi or something like that to set up my own effects and create my own kind of modes and things like that. But at the moment, this works perfectly fine, and I may not even change it. I don't know yet, but I still want to play with the Raspberry Pis and kind of learn that side of it as well. So sit back, watch, enjoy, and hopefully this will help you in making your decision. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I really didn't intend to make a video out of all this initially, so I didn't document every bit and step of the way, which now I wish I would have, and in the future I will start doing that. But in all, I think it all turned out great. I think this has a use in many applications as far as the LED, the ways that they were used. And I hope it helps you in making your decision if you want to use these particular products or something similar to it. But I will continue to start documenting and putting out material that, the little projects that I do around the house, things that I'll work on, and hopefully it will be informational and helpful to all the viewers. And I look forward to doing more of this kind of content. So if you have any questions about something that was done in the video or about something that you're working on, I'll be more than happy to get back with you. Just leave either a comment down in the comments or on my website there's an area where you can contact me as well. So I greatly appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.